Hey, welcome everyone to today's webinar on the Concept Design Architect, Streamlining the Workflow. My name is Eric Bobrow. I'm co-founder of the Architect Marketing Institute, and my colleague and partner today is Jason Jusselson. Hey, Jason, how are you doing?
Doing great, Eric. Great to be on board. Excited for this webinar.
Yeah,
It's fantastic to be here today.
Yeah, looking at some very interesting things that you've developed over the last 17 years in practice. Let me just make sure everybody can hear us and see our webcams, so you can communicate to us during this in the questions section of GoToWebinar. When you type in, please just say hello, say where you're calling in from, because I think we probably have people from a lot of different areas. So I see Janelle from Auckland, New Zealand. All right, so
Whoa.
it's the middle of the night there. Wow, you're dedicated. And Rick from, I know is in Tokyo. Okay, and Janelle says, oh, it's 6 a.m. Oh, that's right. Okay, it's Pedro from Mexico, Cameron from Vancouver, Carol from Colorado. I won't be able to read everybody, but I'm definitely seeing Chris from London. I'll just, Ian from Scotland, so we're getting certainly from Europe. Bob from Palm Beach Gardens. All right, so, and we've got 100 people on the line right now. I'm sure it'll go up during the next few minutes as people file into the room, so to speak. All right, well, what are we going to talk about today? We're going to be talking about concept design workflow, the resources, tools, and methods that Jason's developed to make it easier to do design studies and present it to your client. There's a lot of tools out there. Many of you know that I'm an ArchiCAD expert. So ArchiCAD is one of the major BIM tools. Revit obviously is the leading BIM tool that does 3D intelligent design. That's something that Jason's an expert in. This is one of my rare forays out of the ArchiCAD world and beyond the world of marketing for architects. But what caught my eye when Jason, when you reached out to me, was that you're using technology in a way that helps architects win business, that helps architects get the job done effectively. And that fascinates me, and that's something that I'm always interested in. And while I use a different tool in terms of ArchiCAD, I have a feeling, as we look at this, that there's going to be ways to take your insights and your methods and use it in other tools like ArchiCAD. And so I'm going to be on the edge of my seat seeing how you do things with the Revit massing tool, for example, and just thinking how I could adapt it. Because it's really the mindset. It's about saying, what do you need to communicate to the potential client that will make them go, wow, you really understand what I want, and ultimately give them the confidence that you can take that project and run with it, and we'll be able to get a good end result. So how did you get into this, Jason? Let's talk for a few minutes before we show the screen. Just, you've been working as an architect for 17 or more years?
Yeah, well, firstly, just to make sure that everyone can hear me, we always have some technical problems with the microphones. Yeah, my name's Jason. Basically, I'm a concept design specialist. I qualified as an architect at the University of Cape Town. And I got into conceptual design at least about 17 years ago. I was always passionate about drawing in 3D on the computer. And my whole career just took me in that direction because kind of bridged the world of architecture, design, and art, and ways to present my work in the 3D medium. And I landed up in about 2006 and 2007 working for the biggest commercial firm in Johannesburg, South Africa, and I was put in the design department. I did have ability to do 3D visualization, but what I began to realize is that it was very stressful because there were so many deadlines. And at that time, I was newly married, and I had small children, and I didn't want to work all night. So I thought to myself, there's got to be a better way to perform these tasks, a more streamlined way. And I came up with these methods way back then, because SketchUp had just been born in its infancy, and it had started to become workable as a software. And Revit as well was like, in version, I think 8 at that time. So I started to use those two products and come up with a streamlined workflow.
Okay, all right. So
Yeah.
we're going to be able to see just a little taste of the workflow that you've developed in today's session. Let's make it possible to see your screen. So I'm going to go and make you presenter here. So you can then bring up your screen.
Okay, guys, so here we go. Can everyone see this? It should say Silo Towers, be a perspective.
Yeah. Now we have a blank area on the right side that you'll need to move off your screen or to your other screen because it's blocking the view.
Okay.
That
There you go.
Good.
Is that better?
Yeah, now we're able to see it. We're just seeing a corner of it in the bottom there.
Okay.
All right. So we're going to be looking right now. I guess these are some of the final results, and ultimately, it helps to just know where we're going with this. And what we're doing is, of course, after some design analysis, study, consideration, ending up with something that a client can look at and go, yeah, that would be a good way to approach this. So take us through what you end up with, why you end up with this particular style, in terms of focusing the eye on certain things and not others, like, for example, not having too much detail, too much materiality, and then how you get there, at least some of the tools.
Okay. No problem. So, fellow design architects out there, what we're busy taking a look at is conceptual design. So the minute you jump to the idea of rendering, so then you need to take a step backwards, because at this particular stage of the design process, we're just trying to get a concept out, and the mindset should be focused on design and producing a concept more so than rendering. So at this stage, we don't get into intense rendering, so we want to keep the rendering kind of basic and easy to use for the design architect. So what you're taking a look at is a final product to a project that was completed, and this is the ultimate aim. So we're taking a look at layouts that may look like this and may look like that, and there are going to be about 6 or 7 different boards, precedent boards, and we're going to take a look at this final product, because this final product incorporates all the layers that I would want to teach to my students. You're taking a look at foliage, you're taking a look at people, you're taking a look at designing the building. It's not about presentation only, it's about designing the building. And we're going to start to take a look at how we actually got here. But what you're taking a look at right now is the final product that will be presented at your first conceptual design or meeting with your client. And you need to get there pretty fast. So I'm talking in a region of 1 to 4 days to produce a product like this to final design, and not to have that back-breaking stress of rendering, trying to get stuff out on time, to work and focus on the design process, to enjoy the design process. So when we're taking a look at softwares, we are not looking at software as a point of artificial intelligence. Any software needs to be used in a certain way, just like a pen or a pencil. It's no good to have the software at your disposal but not know how to use it. Just like a pen was used by Frank Lloyd Wright or by Antonio Gaudi or Mies van der Rohe. They had pens and pencils and rulers, and so you need to start to take a look at software as the leverage tool. And that's kind of what we're going to be taking a look at tonight. So these are the final images. I'm not going to show you a whole bunch. You can take a look at my Facebook page. You can take a look at the portfolio. But the final objective is to get to an image of this quality. And I'm going to zoom in here. We're going to take a look at the amount of detail that happens in here. So we're taking a look at cars, transportation, design. We're taking a look at structural members, repetitive structural members. We're taking a look at curb details, parking details, And we're taking a look at activating the space by using green spaces and learning how to do green spaces, incorporating people and population into the design to get a sense of scale, and just keeping it very sort of balanced, because a design without these entourage elements becomes a bit stagnant and sterile. So you take a look here at the penthouse area of the roof. We've got swimming pool, and we've got some umbrellas and some dining chairs and tables. And so we're just trying to get to a level where it makes the building compelling. And I'm going to take you into a SketchUp file to show you this detail in SketchUp. But ultimately, in Photoshop, we did a bit of post-production and we put it together. And that's really the Photoshop side. And it is a process where we use layers. We want to soften the export images that we export out of SketchUp. We want to soften them. So we bring them into Photoshop in layers. We bring multiple shadows in layers into Photoshop, and we start to soften the image so it doesn't look like a traditional sterile conceptual design image that's produced either in ArchiCAD, Revit, or SketchUp. We're trying to bring a human element, an artistic touch to the imagery as well. So that's very important to note. And so yeah, that's it for Photoshop for right now. And I don't know, we're going to jump and take a look at what the SketchUp model is. Can I jump into SketchUp, Eric?
Let's just, I just want to emphasize, this is an interactive presentation in that if you have a question, please type it into the GoToWebinar questions area, and I will sort of keep an eye on that and sort of prompt Jason, about it. So I see a question from Elisa. Will this presentation be recorded for viewing again later? Yes. Yeah, it's being recorded right now, and we will make that available. But other questions, yeah, please ask. And how many of you, maybe you can just type in, how many of you are using Revit? How many are using ArchiCAD who are on the call today? Right now we have 129 people on here. So yeah, just say, I'm in New York City and I use Revit, or I'm in London and I use ArchiCAD, or whatever. Just be interesting. I'd like to just get a sense of that. So please do that. And of course, any questions, feel free to add them. So go ahead and let's see, switch over to your SketchUp environment.
Okay, great. Just before we jump into SketchUp, I just wanted to say that an integral part to this whole process is the Revit massing tool, which we're going to take a look at last. I'm just going to be retroactive in the way I show you how everything works. From the final product, we're going to go back quickly into the basic setup, and the massing model in Revit allows us to create floor slabs and also curtain walling systems, which are obviously, if you're an architect, you already know what a curtain wall system is, but Revit has the most amazing ability to create these curtain wall systems. Can you see my cursor over here, guys? So this area here is a curtain wall system. So it allows you to vary the curtain wall systems ad infinitum, and basically that ultimately creates the detail. So if you take a look at this outdoor patio area, we also have detailing here. It's done with the same curtain wall system that I used for the facade, but the profiles were bigger. And so you can start to build a library of things that happen. Let's get into the SketchUp model, guys.
Yeah, and by the way, while you're doing that, someone asked about, do you include chief architect in your references? Not quite sure what the abilities are of chief architect that would be similar, but certainly watch this and see what you can understand. I'll just say right now, looking at the curtain wall stuff that you're doing there, absolutely doable in ArchiCAD, awesome. What I'm seeing there. So that's good. And ultimately, we're talking about how do you create areas and volumes with a certain level of definition. It's not the final thing. It's not, engineered and worked out, but it represents things. And, ArchiCAD has good system level tools to be able to say, we're going to repeat this on a certain frequency. We're going to have,
Yeah.
a big panel
Yeah.
and a small panel, those sort of things. So
Yeah.
do go on.
Absolutely, Eric. Eric, like I said before, guys, you must consider the tools as the strength of the design. So what I'm trying to say by that is it's the tools that help you create the design. So if you can find the tools within ArchiCAD, then by all means you can use ArchiCAD. I'm going to show you how to do it in Revit. And I'm not an ArchiCAD user. I used to use it. I haven't used it for a while, but it's evolved and it's an amazing package. So ArchiCAD is fantastic, and I'm sure there's several other packages that you can use. But the whole idea here is to retain the concept, the mindset of what I'm going to show you, so that you can use it if you want somewhere else. I teach it in Revit. Maybe Eric can teach it in ArchiCAD. That's cool. So let's just take a look. So basically the model is very defined, and this is the type of model that you want to achieve in a 3 to 4 day period. You want to incorporate all these elements, and there are quick ways to do it, and there's streamlined workflows to do it. For instance, Revit creates a whole bunch of these elements like we spoke about before, and these elements are, if you want to call them, components. And what does a component mean? A component means that if you edit one element, right? So if I double click on this element over here and I edit it, it will change all the other elements. And I'm just going to give you an example. This is not a architectural lesson. This is just a component lesson, really. So you immediately, when I edit this element over here, it changes all the others. As you can see, it's changed all the others. So Revit lets me set up these components pretty easily, and you can do immaculate details. So whatever you do to this one element will happen across to all the others if they are the same geometry. You can see this corner element hasn't worked, but you can delete it and just copy this one across. So that's the beauty about SketchUp. SketchUp allows you to integrate with other softwares like Revit, where in Revit they call it a family. It's the same thing where it's a repetitive BIM information type, and if you edit one, all the others change. And if you take a look at this model, there are different elements at play, and normally for a building, if you actually break a building down into its basic components, what it's made up of is a series of floor slabs. You can see these floor slabs over here. It's made up of curtain walling systems. It's made up of solid wall systems, and then basically detail components. And that is really what buildings are made up of. And you need to vary those components as you are working in your CAD environment. So there are 3 to 4 components that you just need to play around with, And so the last thing I wanted to say is, if you take a look, I'm going to click on this building. If you take the main building out of this, and what I normally do is, this is the building that I bought in. So if I delete this, the landscape has been done in SketchUp, where the building has been done in Revit. So the finer details in SketchUp, and the landscape in, the finer details and the landscape in SketchUp, and the main jewel of the building gets modeled in Revit. Last but not least, I just wanted to say one more thing, is that it's very important to embellish your models with Entourage. Like I said before, if you have a model that doesn't have people, trees, cars, vehicles, it looks absolutely sterile and dead. So that happens in SketchUp too. It doesn't happen in Revit. And the beauty about SketchUp, guys, is this is the major part why I use SketchUp, is because I use SketchUp for a few other things within this process. But today we're just going to talk about the viewing. The viewing of the model in SketchUp is incredible. As you can see, I can hone in straight into my design and start taking shots from any angle that I want. And it allows me to get up and close to whatever I'm trying to express to my client and then basically render it. SketchUp has also got the most amazing shadow system. It's not V-Ray, it's not a high-end shadow system, but you can render a whole bunch of shadows, and it just really gives volume to the design. And if you're really clever about your shadow system, you can produce 4 or 5 different shadows at different times of day, and you can layer it in Photoshop, and with a bit of post-production in Photoshop, you can ultimately create a stylized volumetric shadow that is, it's not a V-Ray shadow, or it's more synthetic, but it gives the model volume. Okay, so that's it for SketchUp. SketchUp's an amazing tool. And just one last thing, I don't use SketchUp as just a presentations tool. SketchUp and Revit together I use as a design tool. So I produce a model in Revit, I bring it into SketchUp, I play around with it a little bit, I take my ideas back into Revit, and then the process goes on a few more times, back and forth, just like the drawing board with a pen and paper or architectural bump, and eventually I am sculpting my design, and my final product gets produced in Revit. So that's it for SketchUp for today, Eric.
Yeah, Jason.
Yeah, any questions?
Yeah, so it seems like you're primarily using SketchUp for adding the entourage and for producing the base visualization that you've taken to Photoshop. Is that right?
Well, the truth be told, if you join me in the process, you know, it's not just something we can exhibit tonight in a short time, but the fact of the matter is the whole idea of ergonomics. We relate to space through the size of people. So what happens with me with SketchUp, it allows me to look at this entrance canopy here, and it allows me to make design decisions. The problem that I find in Revit and other programs is that their visualization side of things is very slow, sometimes cumbersome. SketchUp allows me to get into my design thought process, and like I'll look at this canopy and I'll say, that's not working for me, and I can even go and take a look at it from this side and say, no, I need to change it, or I need to change the profile. So SketchUp is more than just a presentation tool. SketchUp is a tool where I can experiment. For instance, let's say I wanted to create something exciting on this wall. I don't know what right now, but I could just go in and see it immediately by extruding it. So I'm not saying this is a design idea that I have, but let's say this was some sort of component or some sort of fixture attached to the wall there. At least I could have an immediate view of what my product offered me. I wouldn't have to render it, and I can start to sculpt, and I can start playing with my SketchUp model as if it's an interactive 3-dimensional design. Design doesn't just happen in 2 dimensions in rough planning. Design happens in 3D as well. So architects need to remember that you need to be able to design in 3D. You know, it doesn't stop at the 2-dimensional phase on paper and then you bring it into CAD. You need to design in 3 dimensions as well, and that's a very important thing that a lot of architects miss out on because they can't control technology. Anyway, that's it for SketchUp, I reckon.
All right. So you're using it for several different functions, adding the entourage, studying it very quickly, because you're saying in Revit it's slower to get the visualization, and the freedom that you have in terms of some of the 3-dimensional manipulation that maybe is harder to do in Revit. I'll just say in ArchiCAD, probably most of these things are sort of built into that environment. They're working directly in the 3D and having quick visualization in perspective. So it'll be interesting to see just how much of it would benefit from going out into SketchUp there. Certainly SketchUp has some interesting ways of just rendering things that you know, are unique to that tool. And I'm sure that there's a very great library of entourage elements I know are available not only within SketchUp's base system, but the 3D warehouse things that you can, just quickly bring in. All right, so go on to the next question. Or the next
absolutely. Just one last thing I wanted to say, that in SketchUp here, we have something called geolocation, and you can go and add through Digital Planet any geolocation on the planet. This is Digital Globe, and it will import the surface for you of that region. This is a region in Southern Africa, so I imported it, and basically it comes in with it's not precise as a land surveyor's drawings. However, it gives you instant GIS or rough GIS and visual of that area. So you can start accurately before a surveyor has gone out to your site to go and gather that type of information instantly through using this function called add more imagery in the geolocation function in SketchUp, which is a very, very powerful feature for any design architect. Okay, so we'll go into Revit now. Okay.
A few questions here just for you to incorporate in the next phase. So from John McLean, why don't you use SketchUp to do the whole model? So I know you're going to answer that in context. So, and then Ross says, why work in SketchUp when all of those components must be reconstructed prior to CDs? So how do you link this and avoid having to do redundant work? And another question, is the presentation more on exterior shell design and not including planning and layout? So those are a few things that just keep in mind as you go on.
Yeah, no, great questions. And let's get into Revit, because maybe I'll answer some of those questions. I do planning, just to answer your last question, planning and layout gets done in SketchUp. For instance, the planning and layout is underneath this building right now. I'm not going to extract it now, but I'll show you in Revit. So all the planning and layouts I do in SketchUp, and it's unbelievable. It frees up the line tool, so you can almost feel as if you're using a fine liner on paper. I actually find it a lot more functional than a pen. But the whole beauty about it is keeping that hand and mind freedom that one needs, and that's the whole idea behind this process. It's because we have to think quickly, and we don't have time to play around with fighting with technology. So guys, let's just go into Revit here. And so in Revit, what I've actually done here, and it will answer your questions, because the whole idea about Revit, guys, is that if we do something in Revit, we can rehash it straight away. And so I can export my Revit model into SketchUp, noted, and in SketchUp I can kind of look at the form in the third dimension, and I can start tweaking it like a sculptor. But then what I do is I come back into Revit, and I continuously model in my Revit package, because at the end of the day, the Revit model is very clean and crisp. Also, if you do adjustments in SketchUp, they won't be so huge. They'll take 2 or 3 minutes to add to your Revit model instead of hours. So, and I'm going to show you why. So I'm going to show you the Revit model. This is the Revit model over here. And this process is the same building going to the right. So the left is the most advanced model of the building. That's the final model we just looked at in SketchUp. And as you move to the right, I've broken it down into its essence. And I'm going to show you how we kind of got, we won't have time to get into how I got here, but I'm going to show you a little bit about how we get using the masking tool. And I'm just going to, in Revit, we have this section box tool here, which allows us to basically just look at a certain area, and we're going to take a look at how we got there. So there you can see the plan. This is the plan that I drew up, and to answer that first question, sorry, you might have to repeat to me the second question. I can't remember that question. But here's the plan I drew up in SketchUp, which I bought as a DWG, a flat DWG into Revit, and that became my reference. And it's a retail space on the ground floor, and on the upper floors, it's a hospitality hotel and some more retail, and higher up, it's residential units. So we're not going to go into the details of the plan, but here's a mass, okay? And also the basement is also a mass. And what is a mass? A mass is just a primitive shape. It's a cube, whatever you want. It's really easy to do a mass in SketchUp. I'm going to show in Revit. Sorry, getting my words mixed up here. I'm trying to speak too quickly. So the way you do a mass in Revit is basically you just create a profile, and you can either extract it or subtract it as a void. But in this function, we're basically just going to have our mass like that. It is a function in Revit. What we use is called lock profiles, but ultimately you can edit the top or the bottom of the cube and have different profiles that play. I don't use that. It gets too complicated to design unless you've got a lot of time, but you can edit your profile in Revit. It's pretty easy. You can trim it just like you are doing in CAD, and then basically it will regenerate your mass for you. I'm not going to get into the massing tools, but that's really how a mass works. What is a mass? A mass is your outer envelope of the building, and it can get very sophisticated, the mass, and I'll show you how it works. So basically, you can extrude your mass. This is about 35 floors. I've already set my floor levels up here. I'm going to show you guys in my east elevation. You can take a look. There's a whole bunch of level sets up here. And we are just extracting the three-dimensional side of Revit. We're not going to be using anything else in Revit. You don't have to know Revit. All you need to know is the three-dimensional side, which could literally take you an hour to learn. And if you find the same tools in ArchiCAD, by all means use ArchiCAD. I haven't discovered this tool anywhere else. That's why I use it in Revit. So I'm just going to select this obviously the shape, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how Revit works. We're going to go and click this function. It's called mass floor. These are the floors that are set up in elevation, and I'm going to go OK. So immediately what happens is it creates a whole lot of reference floor planes, and what that means is I can use these floor planes to snap my three-dimensional floor slab too. And I'm just going to show you how to do that quickly. So I can go and I can snap it to that floor. You can see I've added a three-dimensional floor there, and another one. You can see the floors are being duplicated down. If I want to select the whole mass, then basically, obviously, it's really easy. I can go and place my floors wherever I choose to create them. I can select the whole thing, and I can go create floor, and you can see it's put the floors on every single floor. Now, reference floor. Let's just put it on everywhere. Okay, so there we've got at least 35 floors. My mass, I can change it up and down. But what I'm going to do for now is I'm just going to show you how incredible this is, because what we can do is if I edit this mass, right, I can copy this mass, and I'm not going to redesign my building right now, so because we don't have enough time to get into that detail. But I've copied my mass off to the side, just like SketchUp. I can select the top. Obviously, I can move it down. And then let's just say I want to move it out. And I just want to select this side. And the way you do that is hold the tab down. And let me just quickly do this. I don't want to spend too much time because you'll see how amazing it is. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this again, just quickly. And I'm just going to select that edge and then place it down here. So now we've got these three shapes intersecting with each other. I'm just going to join them together, which is a Boolean function in 3D Studio Max. And so we have basically all these surfaces intersecting. You can see that this is intersected with that surface. And not only that, it's put the floor reference planes in place, which I can just go and update my floors, or I could put new floors in and basically just update to face, and it will add them to my mass, which is brilliant. Okay, so we're going to stop there with the floor to mass systems. I'm just going to show you the wall system. It's going to take me about 2 minutes to show you the wall systems. So basically in Revit, we have curtain wall systems, which are unbelievable. They allow us to create mullions and glass. I'm going to add it to these two surfaces over here, and you can take a look. this is glass and 4 mullions. I can adjust the sizes easily. There's a selection tool here on the left, which will allow me to place as many as I want, horizontally, vertically, like a grid structure. Then there's also a wall system, and that wall system allows me to snap to the exterior of my mass. And so basically we start to build our model. Now, that's how easy it is to build a model. I'm going to go and show you quickly what we did before. So basically here you go. So this is the model I ultimately created for this final product in SketchUp. It's really generic. That is what it looks like. It's a whole lot of void functions. And then at the end of the day, I attached curtain wall systems to the facades. I had different mullion thicknesses for this particular element here, and different wall thicknesses here that I snapped to the facade over a curtain wall system. So you start to get this amazing look and feel. And there you can see my floor slabs going up and down the building. It's really powerful, and this can be done in 1 or 2 days. And that's it really. That's the evolution for Revit, the model in Revit. The next part, just before we go on, Eric, are there any questions?
Yes, there are a number. So a common question is going back and forth between Revit and SketchUp, and how easy it is, how much extra effort it is, and why not just stay in one tool? So can you just elaborate on the speed, simplicity of going back and forth, and the relative benefits of doing certain things in one tool and certain in the other?
Okay, so the whole idea behind the hybrid design process is selecting the powerful strengths behind each software. So in SketchUp, we use SketchUp as a free design tool. We use Revit as a modeling tool. And to update the Revit model is extremely quick. Now, for me to export this into SketchUp, and I'm going to show you how to do that right now, is going to take me a few seconds. It's not going to take me hours. It's not going to take me 10 minutes. It's going to take me literally 30 to 40 seconds to get this into SketchUp. So once I've refined my model in Revit, I can always continue in Revit and continue exporting to SketchUp. And to import into SketchUp is second. So why wouldn't I do it in Revit? SketchUp has got similar tools. But what happens is when you want to rehash your design in SketchUp, you have to go to the beginning again, and you have to start working it from the beginning again. And with Revit, you can just update to face. For instance, if I put a curtain system here, I hit create, and now, okay, the client says, no, he doesn't want this. I delete it. I go and I edit this. I pull it backwards. Okay. I add my curtain wall system to the front again, and I export it to SketchUp. That took me literally 30 seconds. Now, the question is, if you want to try to do it in SketchUp, by all means, go and do it. I've done it before in all types of software. It's going to take you hours to do what you can do with the massing tool. It's going to take you hours to do in SketchUp. SketchUp's an amazing package. It's an unbelievable package. But the whole idea is to rehash something needs to happen in the Revit model massing system, and you cannot replace this massing system by anything because of the speed.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so then what is the benefit of going back into SketchUp, and what if you were to add some things into SketchUp? I guess you're not going to be spending time adding entourage and bringing it back into Revit. Is that right?
No, we do not bring the model back into Revit. The final model lands up in SketchUp, the entourage in SketchUp. Revit gets used solely to model the structural elements of the building, and you can say SketchUp in the end of the process gets used to embellish the model with trees, cars, people, aeroplanes, buses, trains, landscape. So the landscape and the context is for SketchUp. The model and refining the model is in Revit. And there are a whole bunch of other tools that I use in Revit that really help me with speed. And this type of refinement is very tedious to do in SketchUp and keep your model clean. You have to be very careful if you're modeling in SketchUp. Revit keeps it in layers. It keeps the layer systems on. It keeps the mass in place. This particular model right now has a mass on. There's a mass here. So if I wanted to change this mass and create a smaller penthouse pergola up here, I could do it within seconds. And I promise you, if you did it in SketchUp, it would take you half an hour. So,
Right.
so that's basically.
So you're going to be bringing back in something selectively from SketchUp after doing some experimentation, but you're not going to bring back the entourage.
No,
I want to emphasize something here. We're not talking about the workflow of the entire project from beginning to working drawings. Right now, we're focused on getting conceptual design done quickly and presentations of that conceptual design quickly. So this is what, Jason, you've really fine-tuned, is a process that allows fluidity and uses the strengths of the tools, for this particular phase. Do you want to speak at all about how this plays out in the longer term as the design develops? Is that something that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very important. What I wanted to say to you is, don't be frightened of bridging two programs together. It's like buying a Ferrari and expecting it to be a pickup truck as well. So you could get a garage in your house and have a Ferrari, and park next to it, you can have your pickup truck. So I'm saying have the pickup truck and have the Ferrari. So what I'm saying to you is, I understand you saying you want to keep things consistent in one software, and I understand that, but unfortunately, I don't believe this process would work as quickly as it could in one software. And I've tried to do everything in Revit before. I've tried to do my whole process with different programs, and I believe that you need to extract the strengths of separate programs here. So if it means exporting the visual model into SketchUp once every 20 minutes, so be it. It will save you hundreds of hours per week. So if it's going to save you hundreds of hours per week, thousands of hours per month, and for your company, if you have a company or if you're working as an independent architect, you can go home early in the evening instead of spending the whole night working and burning the midnight oil and drinking coffee and smoking cigarettes like other architects do. So the question is, that's up to you, and that's what you need to decide. Do you want to struggle with just one particular software, or do you want to borrow the strengths of each software as a hybrid design workflow works? And that is my question to you guys out there. I hope that makes sense.
Okay.
Did I leave anything out?
Well, there are some questions. Okay, here's can you easily change floor heights in Revit? So that would be a concepts question.
Absolutely. I'll do it for you right now. It takes 1 second. Here's a floor. Boom. I'm going to move it up. It's pinned. I just need to unpin it. It's locked, as you can see here. And then you just move it up. So normally you lock your floors. Okay, so it's pinned. I'm not sure where the pin is. Let me just take the pin off here. And then you just move it up. And there you go. And now you've got a new floor height, and you can take a look. That's your new floor height, and you'll just update your three-dimensional model with that floor height, and you'll see it will probably update it here. You can see this floor height over here has been increased. I think it's this floor height, but maybe I'm wrong. But that's how easy it is to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there is some questions about using Photoshop. What do you do in Photoshop? You don't necessarily have to demonstrate it, but talk about just why do you take it out of any tool, Revit or SketchUp, and put it into Photoshop? What are the strengths that are unique to Photoshop?
Okay, it's a great question. So Photoshop is not a three-dimensional tool, as we know. Photoshop is a two-dimensional tool. It's used for imagery. So what I do in SketchUp is I set up an angle of a shot, right? So this is an angle, and then I'll render my shadows just as black and white shadows. I'll render a color layer of the building which has the colors. I'll render a separate linear drawing of the product, and basically I'll have them on different layers. So what Photoshop allows you to do, if you go here, there's a layers function, and it allows you to create many different. If you take a look here on the right hand side towards the bottom, there are many different layers, and it allows you to place different layers of the building. And obviously I haven't done it. This has been flattened, this image. I should have opened up an image, but this is a composite of about 6 or 7 different exported images from SketchUp. So this is a layer that can be switched on and off. So I can start to tweak my layers. I can start airbrushing with an airbrush tool my layers. I can start playing with each layer and softening it up in certain artistic ways, which I do show in the training. But for now, it's quite an intense process. I hope that helps. I hope I've answered your question.
Okay, well, I think ultimately Photoshop is post-production. So you've got a concept design that you're at least wanting to share. You're now saying, well, when I show this, what do I want to focus the eye on? So in other words, like the environment here is faded out, right? Okay, that's the simplest type of thing, is just to say, all right, instead of having everything even density, even color tonality, you know, how do you fade things out? Now, I'm noticing here that in the background, the context, we have sort of just these sketchy lines from that particular part of the model. So if you think about it, there's different styles, you know, and even if you do it by hand, you're going to use a certain style in one area, and you're going to use possibly another watercolor or some other things in other areas. So Photoshop allows you to take these multiple images, maybe from the same vantage point, but with certain different settings in your production tool like SketchUp or your rendering environment, and then, you know, use that selectively.
Absolutely, and fellow design architects out there, this image you can see has been softened up. There are parts in it where it's been airbrushed. However, the line thicknesses here, if you were using a rotring pen, is a 0.018, and that's still left as a sharp edge. So I've softened the color up underneath. You can see it's faded here. SketchUp produces flat images, and so it takes me about 3 to 4 minutes to 10 minutes sometimes to composite an image like this. The advantage of doing this is that you're not relying on rendering as like sitting and waiting 15 minutes for a high resolution image to pop out, and then you have to adjust the textures and re-render it. So all I'm saying to you is that it's a quick way of getting your concept sketches out, and that is the most important thing at this moment in time, when your meeting's at 9 o'clock in the morning and it's already 6 o'clock in the morning, and you've got to get these images to the client. It takes a few minutes, and you know that your machine's not going to crash because it's very light on resources.
Right. Okay. So there is a question from Ali saying, will Lumion make that particular SketchUp role for trees, cars, etc.? I mean, can you contrast the effort and the role that Lumion or Twinmotion would have compared to what you're doing?
That is a fantastic question. I love your question, and I absolutely love Lumion. I'm a big Lumion user. I like Twinmotion. Lumion for me is just phenomenal. However, as easy as Lumion is to use, you're still involved with lighting, you're still involved with texture mapping, and it's very tedious to get your model to look convincing. When you're using SketchUp, now this is the main point, it's conceptual. You don't want to give your client too much information. You want to leave your client with the ability to go home or go back to the office and imagine what textures he or materials that he wants to create with a building. It's not going to be the major driving force behind selling your project. This is a concept design, and to get too advanced in rendering, and I do renderings as well, but not at this stage, at a more advanced stage. Sometimes people do ask for Lumion conceptual designs. It takes a lot longer. It takes weeks as compared to days. And all I want to say is that it's a great question. We don't want to get involved in rendering at this stage. We don't want to get involved in lighting. Although that Lumion and Twinmotion are very, very powerful, it's not something that you want to get stuck doing at this stage when you're moving quickly, unless you want to work through the night. And that's really one of the biggest points is you don't want to be working through the night at this stage, because your client's going to change this project at least 4 or 5 times before you get to your design.
So let me pass along some other questions here.
Yes.
From Steve Johnson saying, our River team has told us that it's very difficult to change a Revit model in schematic design. Is it because they're constructing the Revit model incorrectly, possibly with too much detail? What is the Revit mode or model that they should be constructing their model in, a Revit mode, I guess?
I'm not sure of the question. Are you saying that your Revit team are saying that it's too difficult to change the model?
In schematic design, so you know, they make some choices and then it's hard to change those based on input or new ideas, I guess.
It depends how deep you are into schematic design, and that's exactly why I'm showing you this method, is because it's really stupid to go too far down the line with a conceptual design that it becomes tedious. You see, what happens with a lot of design architects is they start doing detailed design at a conceptual design phase. So they're busy playing around, trying to get their Revit model ready for the next phase. And the client hasn't even approved the design yet, and they're already setting up grids, and they're already setting up all the paraphernalia that you need for the next phase. This is exactly the point that this process attacks, is this phase needs to be dynamic. It needs to be a phase that's in flux, that changes, dynamic changes all the time quickly. And that in a commercial firm is the way you need to work before the client comes to pay you and gives you the check and says, okay, here's a few $1 million. I want you to build this building for me. Then you can get involved in detailed Revit design. And that's why people are failing, is because they are trying to set their model up for the next stage of development. This is not that. This is conceptual. In the old days before computers, people used to draw on paper, and they had to update those drawings on paper. And I promise you right now that sketches were only rough-handed perspectives that were done in seconds. They weren't final drawings or perspectives that you see on coffee table books, you know. What I'm trying to express here is don't go too far down the process. Use the massing tool that keeps it simple. If you're going to use traditional methods to hook up your design, you're getting yourself into trouble. Yeah.
Okay. Sally Starbuck asks, did Jason say he imported individual layers from Revit to SketchUp? I know we mentioned layers for in a number of contexts, and particularly in Photoshop, multiple layers of renderings overlaid. But going from Revit to SketchUp, are you doing much in terms of layers?
Absolutely. So that's a fantastic question as well. When you create Revit, it creates layers. The the layers don't get represented as layers in Revit, but as soon as you export your model from Revit into the SketchUp environment, they call it tags. So let me see if I can find it for you. Here are all the layers here, and you can switch them on and off. I'll switch them on and off for you. So absolutely, Revit creates a fantastic layered model where you can switch on floors, mullions. You can see I've got everything off except my curtain wall system. So absolutely, Revit creates the layers for you, and when you import it into SketchUp, it recognizes those layers. And yeah.
So interesting. They resisted for forever layers, and I remember when Revit first came out, one of their claims was, you don't have to worry about managing layers. You know, we sort of show the right thing at the right time, etc. But when you export it, it's creating the equivalent of layers, and in this case, it's called tags in SketchUp. Okay.
Yeah. No, Revit does have layers. If you go into the VV menu here, except the way they sort their layers out is like, if it's walls, it will be called walls over here, for instance.
They're called categories.
Windows.
They're called
categories. They call them exactly model categories. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Now, Eric Alama says, what software do you use for working drawings? I'm assuming that would be developed in Revit in this case.
Absolutely. Look, the mainstream offices that I've worked in with the bigger projects, I've only worked in offices where they've been using Revit and they have Revit teams. Okay. So this particular model can be continue. I would say they would rework this model quite a lot. Yeah, it's just the base model, if you want to call it that.
The massing is a tool, and these methods are a way to work out the concept, and then just you turn it into a more detailed tools for actually doing schematic design and design development. There's a comment from
okay, go on.
Yeah, a comment from Samir saying, you know, ArchiCAD allows us to do these things all in one environment. I do agree that a lot of what we're seeing with Revit and SketchUp probably can be done within the ArchiCAD environment. I do like the idea of the renderings being put into Photoshop because I think there's a lot of ability to control detail, and I like the particular example of having hard edge lines for certain things, but the colors being washed over, and by doing multiple layers, you're able to have some finesse. There is a question from Bojadar saying, why the multiple shadows? I know in your SketchUp output, you have, is that just to sort of make it less stark, So
it's a great question, right? And the way that I can answer that is, if you take a look at the shadows right now, they are accenting different parts of the building. Can you see that, guys? You can see the white is like pretty intense on the one side here. And then if I shift the shadow frame to a different time of day, it's going to accent other parts of my building. So the more shadows that I create, it starts to define details that you wouldn't see if you had one shadow. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's interesting. You're taking some liberties with the reality where, you know, at any given point in time,
absolutely,
the sun is in one position, and, you know, you take a photo, it's based on that. But here we're talking about communicating. We're talking about communicating concept. We're talking about communicating certain details that need to stand out. And so, yeah, you can use your artistic sense to make certain things stand out based on lighting and shadow. And if you do it artistically,
so it's an artistic pursuit. Yeah, it's an artistic pursuit. Absolutely.
Yeah.
If you wanted to create the exact time of day, then by all means you can do that as well. But absolutely.
Yeah. So Steve Johnson, who was the one who talked about the team having a hard time, you know, updating or changing the model, says, so there's no thickness to the walls. Please review what Revit tools they should be using in conceptual design to accomplish what you're talking about. So I'm just going to say, before you answer this, Jason, This is an introductory webinar. This is talking about sort of the big picture of stuff.
Yeah.
Obviously, Jason can't teach everything he knows in this hour. In fact, we're at the hour mark, so we're gonna have to finish up shortly. You can make a quick comment on that, but this is something that I know you're gonna be explaining. You have some, this coming week, you're gonna be sharing a number of videos that will be going into some more of these areas in detail. You're calling it your empowerment training week. It's going to empower all of you to understand more about this process, to see how you might apply it, and ultimately to see where you want to get training and more in-depth guidance on this, because I know that you're working after the empowerment week. You know, you're going to be offering a training, and so for those of you who are saying this looks great, I get the idea, but I don't quite know how to do it. You know, if that's something that you're going to be helping people with. So
yeah, absolutely, Eric. We're going to have the empowerment training week. We're going to explain to you a business strategy as well. You must understand, fellow design architects out there, that I've been working in a commercial practice in several in South Africa and in the Middle East, and this strategy is something that has been used on a daily basis within the Middle East, here in Israel and in Africa. So there's been a lot of testing of how quickly this works compared to other methods. And it's not that I've been working in isolation, and I've been under extreme amounts of pressure to produce many projects. So this is 17 years of accumulated strategy, and we're going to be sharing that in the Empowerment Week this week. And there's going to be a training on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We're going to send that out to everyone that's registered, and it's just going to be a very powerful way to start to get into the mindset of streamlining your workflow so that you can optimize your design processes, so you don't waste thousands of hours of expensive labor costs on your projects before you've actually sealed and locked in your client. So yeah, we're going to experience that this whole week, and then thereafter there's going to be this amazing training, and I'm going to show you how to do this step by step in small bite-sized chunks.
okay, yeah. So we're going to need to finish up, but a couple of final questions. So how about sunlight or daylight penetration of interior spaces? You've been showing just exteriors. Can you use
Yes.
this method for interior presentations and study?
Absolutely, and in fact, I have done a whole bunch, but there's no interior in this scheme, absolutely, but you can use it for interior studies. It's not going to be as unbelievable as a 3D rendering, but you can get some awesome effects from it. Yes, sketchy effects, and if that person wants to email me, I'll send them some interior shots. You can email me at jason@theconceptdesignarchitect.com.
Okay, excellent. So let us see here. Yeah, some other questions about interior stuff. So that'll be something that, you know, there's definitely interest in how this type of an approach can be used for interior design concepts and studying lighting and things. And so perhaps you can put that on your list of things to share next week. Obviously, next week, again, it's not going to be teaching you everything, but it's going to be giving you some more detail on some of the specific areas. So I want to thank you.
I would just say to your clients out there that interior design, I'm a design architect, so the training is focused on architectural design mainly, rough planning and the 3D envelope. So yeah, so if you want to email me privately and see if this works for you, that's great.
Okay, great. So Jason, I think you've really opened our eyes to some interesting approaches to workflow. There are more questions, of course, and that's part of why you're going to be continuing to share with us additional materials. You know, I was very pleased to see, you know, some of the ways that you were working with the massing and curtain wall systems in Revit, and I can see, you know, the power of that. I'm going to be contemplating sort of some of the ways that ArchiCAD can handle some of those things. I think ultimately the idea here is how do you use the right tools for the right part of your process? How do you put in the right level of detail to communicate something that feels real, but yet you haven't gone overboard? How do you keep it malleable so that, hey, you want to change something quickly, you haven't put in all these little pieces that you have to be dealt with, you're dealing with system tools where you can, so there's just a whole lot of things that you've brought to the table for workflow that I think are quite clear. At least to me, I can see the clarity of your thinking, the clarity of how this can avoid some of the pitfalls that we so often see, where people go in and just put in too much detail right away, which then makes it harder to play with and adjust and update. So using the right tools in the right ways will do that.
I mean, there is an immense amount of detail in this conceptual design model. The question is how I got to it was much quicker.
Mm-hmm. Right. By the way, so one comment from Mitchell Hansen. Thank you, Jason. This reminds me of presentation skills when I was drawing by hand in college. It's a lost art of presentation. Bless you. So if you think about when you were in the early stages of training, I mean, certainly, as part of architectural school, there was something that perhaps you focused on then, maybe with the guidance of some excellent teachers, that often is lost in the rush to do things in an architectural office. And I don't speak from the experience of, because I haven't worked in an architectural office. I've always helped architects as opposed to being an architect. But I do know that when you say, hey, these tools can do all this amazing stuff, and you try to do it all at once, and you try to do it sort of out of order, you end up fighting yourself to some extent. So if you think about, and I think about this with marketing, because a lot of you know me from the Architect Marketing Institute, and about how do you communicate to clients what they want to see, what they need to see, how you're resolving their questions or issues or needs. You have to think about where your effort is going and what it's going to communicate. So presentation, the right level of detail, at the right time, and the right focus is so important.
Yeah, exactly that. You're spot on. It's about being mature about how you do something, and the maturity of the design process means what do you pick and what do you purge? What don't you do? And by being mature about the design process, you can really, if your office is busy or if you do have a lot of work, then you really can accomplish a lot in a short amount of time, which will optimize your budgets. Your financial side will be optimized. I've seen architects sweat over work while I'm going out for lunch, and I've said to them, listen, come and take a look at this process. It could help you so much in your life because you could use it over and over again. And there are many architects that have seen this process in action, but then there are those that don't, and they're still sweating 15 years later behind their screens. And I can promise you it's not going to get easier for them. So it all depends on what you want to get out of your process. And not only that, these drawings have a huge impact on clients, because the client at this conceptual stage, now guys, I know we've gone over the time, but a client at this conceptual stage is not expecting a drawing that looks like the drawing that you've got in front of you on the screen right now. It's not at this level. And so when you show your client something like this, he automatically thinks these people have put a lot of energy into this at this stage, and he's more willing to commit because he can see that you've got these tools at your disposal. So he's probably more optimistic and excited at this stage. He'll go and show the quantity surveyor, he'll go show the developer, he'll go show his wife, he'll take the brochure home on paper, and he will be excited at this stage. If you just give him a rough sketch, you're doing your own workflow an injustice, because you could be closing the deal at this stage.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jason, I think you've opened our eyes to some new ways of thinking about things, or at least angles on things that we've all struggled with, or tried to find a good balance. I do think that using the right tools at the right time and focusing your efforts is key to almost any type of endeavor. For more information, of course, stay tuned. I know Jason will be sending out some emails, releasing some videos. I'll be participating along the way. Jason's certainly the one who's going to be actually doing the presentations and the teaching, but I'm going to be there to help make sure that everything goes smoothly. I'm really excited to see, the launch of the Concept Design Architect platform. This is something that Jason's been developing as a system for years, and actually did an earlier launch earlier this year, and got some great feedback from people who went through some of the training that he created then. But this is taking it up another level, and we're excited to bring this to you. So
yeah, awesome. Don't miss the Empowerment Training Week, like Eric says. It's going to be packed jam of value. It's absolutely complimentary and free, and we are going to put some great new ideas into your thought process. And all you need to do is just make sure that you check your email early Monday morning, and you'll receive your first training. And then Tuesday night, we're going to have an FAQ, a Zoom FAQ, or maybe a GoToWebinar. And then Wednesday is another training. Thursday night, we're going to have an online FAQ. And then on Friday, there's the last training. So absolutely don't forget Monday morning, look in your inbox, and we'll be sending that out to you.
okay, excellent. So we see a lot of people saying thank you, learned something new today. The imagery is great. So definitely many of you are appreciating this and expressing it. Please add your comments if you haven't done already. I always love to read them. It makes me feel good that we have hit the mark, at least pretty well.
Yeah, I think it's very valuable that people send us what they're struggling with. If you can send me to Jason at the Concept Design Architect, is on the website. Just send me what you're struggling with. Just type up a few lines, send it out to me. It really helps us assess, because we're putting the final dots and on the I and crossing the T's on our training. And if we have more feedback from you, it's just going to be awesome, and look forward to your feedback. It's really the most important part of this whole process.
Mm-hmm. So I want to thank you all for joining us today. Thank you, Jason, for a really fascinating presentation, well organized. I think you covered a lot in just barely over an hour. So you can drop a line to me. You've been getting emails from me most likely, and
yeah, Eric as well. Just send them to Eric, and I'll answer with Eric. Brilliant. Yeah.
So we'll look forward to walking along with you along this next part of the journey. Next week there'll be new materials that Jason will be sharing for free, and then following that he'll actually be launching a course, and that'll be something that I think, if you like what he's been sharing today and next week, then you'll definitely want to check that out.
Yeah.
So
the following Monday we'll be launching the course, and that's going to just be awesome. And it's just going to be fantastic, and we'll send you more information about that as well.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks everybody. Thank you, Jason. We'll catch you next week, and we'll stay in touch. Take care.
Thank you guys. Thank you for spending your time online.
Bye-bye.
Bye.